Chapter 8. A Nest of Crooks and Gangsters. From somewhere inside the walls of the cave there came a deep rumbling and grinding of machinery as, very slowly, the jagged zigzag crack in the solid wall widened and widened and widened until the two halves of what was really a secret door slid sideways into deep slots in the side walls of the cave. And what do you think Chitty Bang Bang's lights showed through the opening? A huge vaulted room, quite as big as the inside of your village church or civic building. And all around the sides were cases and boxes and barrels and sacks neatly stacked up against the walls. It was an underground warehouse. A very secret warehouse for secret things. But what could these things be? And who owned them? And why did the owners want to keep them secret? And why did they want a very private cave leading down through the cliff to the sea? And where were the owners? And since it smelt so strongly of secrecy, and therefore probably unlawfulness, how nasty could these owners be? These questions and many others ran through all their minds, and Commander Pot put their thoughts in a nutshell when he put his hands on his hips and declared, "Ho hum! I smell dirty work! Now then, everyone, switch on the brains! Full power! What should we do next?" Mimsy, who was, like all mothers, worried about the children, said at once, "Darling, let's close the secret door again and reverse quietly back down the way we came. I don't like the look of this at all." But Jeremy and Jemima just wouldn't agree to this. They were both the teeniest bit trembly about the way the adventure was going. But they had inherited some of their father's exploring bug, and they were terribly eager to discover the secrets of the big underground vault. "Oh, please," they both pleaded. "Please, let's do find out what it's all about." Commander Pot reflected and said, "Well, Mimsy, after all, no one's going to eat us, and the children don't seem worried. I vote we see the adventure through. It would be ghastly reversing Chitty Bang Bang the whole way back now over a mile of cave to the sea. Besides, we've been climbing all the way, and we can't be very far from the top of the cliff. The cave obviously goes out of this vault to the other side and leads to the top. Come on, we'll drive the car up onto the level floor of the vault and give her a rest, and then we'll have a good explore. After all, this is pretty thrilling, and we really must get to the bottom of the secret." "All right, darling," said Mimsy rather reluctantly. "You know I'm just as keen as you are to find out what this is all about. But if you ask me, there's something pretty fishy about this. Something, well, something criminal. I wouldn't be surprised at all if we hadn't come across a nest of crooks and gangsters. I only hope none of them appear while we're looking into their secret hoard." "Oh, well," said Commander Pot cheerfully, "have to take the rough with the smooth. You never get real adventures without a bit of risk somewhere. Come on!" And they all piled back into Chitty Bang Bang and crept up the last bit of slope until they were parked slap in the middle of the huge secret vault. While the others piled out and began carefully sniffing around the edge of the bales and barrels and packages, Commander Pot went back and found the switch on their side of the secret door, and with a grind and a hum of machinery, the two halves came back together again. Then he came back and they all systematically began to pry and peer into the secret stocks that were piled up round the walls of the big, echoing vault. Jeremy was first. "Machine guns!" he cried excitedly. "Packed in grease paper. They're in sections and ready to assemble." Mimsy said, "Oh, heavens! Boxes and boxes of bombs and hand grenades." "Daggers!" called Jemima. "All kinds of them. And bayonets with rifles to go with them."
"Well, I'm dashed," said Commander Pot. "Dynamite in these cases, and yards of fuse. And gelignite, the stuff burglars use to blast open safes and strong rooms."
"Revolvers!" called out Jeremy. "Automatic pistols, big ones and small ones, every kind, with boxes and boxes of cartridges." Mimsy called out anxiously, "Now, children, don't touch anything. You can look, but not touch. Something might go off." Mothers are always thinking of something is going to go off. On Guy Fawkes Day, for instance, with the fireworks. And very often, mothers are right about this. I must admit that Jeremy and Jemima knew this through one bitter experience with a box of jumping crackers, and they were very careful about the way they peered into the boxes and bales. And so the search went on, and there was no doubt about it. The family had come upon a great secret arsenal of weapons that certainly hadn't been hidden down in the vault, except for some secret and probably criminal purpose. Finally, they all came together again in the middle of the vault, and they looked at their father to see what he was going to say about this extraordinary and rather frightening discovery. Commander Pot had a scruffy bit of paper in his hand, and he said,
"You know what I think all this stuff is for?"
In one of the boxes full of clubs and knuckle dusters, there was a scrap of paper that said,
"Special order for Joe the Monster, 453 Basher Street, Soho, London."
Now he's the man I've read about from time to time as being responsible for the most of the bank robberies and holdups in England that the papers are always full of. But the police have never been able to catch him, and they've never even been able to find out where he gets his weapons from.
Well, there's no doubt about it. This is his secret arms dump, and I bet my bottom dollar that he smuggles what he wants from time to time over the channel on foggy nights by speedboat. Now," Commander Pot scratched his head, "what do we do next?"
I know, cried Jeremy, excited. "We blow it all up!" "Don't be silly, darling," said Mimsy. "What about us? And Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? Do you want to blow us up as well?"
"Well," Commander Pot thought thoughtfully, "it would be rather fun, wouldn't it? But first, we must all find a way out of here. The cave must go on to the top of the cliff, or Joe the Monster and his gang couldn't have gotten all this stuff down here. Now, I've noticed that the draft we've been feeling all the way up the cave has been coming from over there," and he pointed to the back of the vault, "behind those huge packing cases. Let's just have a look." He went over to the packing cases and hauled on the front one, and instead of weighing a ton as they had all expected, it moved easily aside, and so did the next one, and the next one. And when he moved the fourth, with the help of the family all tugging and panting, there was the continuation of their cave, sloping upwards in the distance. There was a pale glimmer of light. "By golly!" cried Commander Pot. "That must be the top. Now then, we'll get Chitty Chitty Bang Bang through the opening and go on up until we get out of here, and then I'll run back and lay a fuse down the cave to the dynamite, and we'll get as far away as we possibly can before the firework display." He looked at his watch. "It's after 8, so it'll be dark enough to get most out of our fireworks. But I'm famished, and I know all of you must be. So after the big bang, we'll go off to the nearest town, and find somewhere for dinner and bed. We'll certainly have earned it after all this evening's work. Well, if all goes well. And I don't see why it shouldn't." So they piled back into Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, and she started up with her 2 small sneezes and 2 small explosions, and they motored up between the packing cases and up the slope and out to the secret vault with its huge hoard of explosives and guns that belonged to the biggest crook in England, Joe the Monster. Outside the vault, Commander Potts stopped the car and went back, and while the twins watched through the entrance to see what he did, he took a long roll of fuse out of one of the boxes. It looks like stiff, thin rope, and it's stuffed with magnesium powder or some other quick-burning explosive, rather like a blue touch paper you light when you want to set off fireworks. And he attached one end to the stacks of dynamite that comes in long oblong sticks, and piled with all the gelignite, that's some stiff putty stuff, on top of the dynamite, and then he unrolled the length of fuse and came back to the car after blocking up the entrance again so that the big crates so that the explosion, when it came, wouldn't chase them up the cave. Then he gave Jeremy the big roll of fuse to unwind as they went along, and off went Chitty Chitty Bang Bang up the sloping cave towards the distant glimmer that was the entrance. The entrance was hidden behind a big clump of bushes in an old disused quarry, but Chitty Chitty Bang Bang nosed her way through, and they bumped and banged across the rough floor of the quarry until they came to a cart track that led away from the fields to one of the French main roads about 10 miles away. It was getting dusky by now, and far across the fields they could see the side lights of a car that seemed to be coming towards them along the same cart as they were on. "Well, I expect it's some farmer," said Commander Pot. "Come on, we'd better set the light to the fuse and get away quick, or we, and perhaps the farmer too, may get a lump of chalk on our heads. There's a terrific load of explosive down inside the cave, and heaven knows how much of the cliff we're going to blow up when the fuse gets the dynamite." Commander Pot got out of the car, took the rest of the roll of fuse from Jeremy, cut off the end, and threw the rest of the coil into the back of the car. Then he knelt down and put a match to the end of the fuse. Well, I don't know if you've ever seen a real fuse on fire, but the flame runs almost as fast as you can run. And with a tiny bang and a sputter, the little yellow flame darted across the floor of the quarry back towards the bush that hid the mouth of the cave, and Commander Pot dived for the driver's seat and got Chitty Chitty Bang Bang quickly through the gears and racing off along the cart track away from the danger area. When he had got a good 200 yards away from the edge of the quarry, he stopped the car, and they all looked back and waited. And I must confess that Mimsy and Jeremy and Jemima had their hands firmly clamped over their ears. "It must be close now," cried Commander Pot excitedly. And even as he said, "Now," there came a deep, rumbling roar right down inside the cliff, and the ground shook, and a great yellow flame jet shot out of the quarry that they had just left. And from the edge of the cliff there came a distant flash and a deep boom, and a pillar of smoke rose slowly into the air as the force of the explosion rushed down the long cave and burst out by the edge of the sea. There came a series of smaller underground explosions and crackles as the ammunition boxes blew up one by one by one, and the bombs and the cartridges caught fire. And then there came one last terrific roar and a whoosh of flame out of the quarry and to the seawards, and there was a crackling and a rumbling noise in the ground, and the cliff top above the cave split open, and smoke and flame came out like a mixture between a volcano and an earthquake. And then the smoking crack in the ground closed again, leaving a big dent in the grass where the inside of the cliff had collapsed, filling the underground vault and the remains of the cave. And then there was silence, and they all let out their breath with a whoosh. "By golly," said Jemima. "Gee whiz," said Jeremy. "Well, I never," said Mimsy.